Someone said there's not a housing shortage. We do have a lot of supply right now. Our housing shortage is over. Not really. Someone said there's not a housing shortage. There is a home ownership shortage. Not sure what you mean by that. Maybe what you mean is that we should have more homeowners in this country. This was the philosophy of the early 2000s. There was this big push to make every middle income American into a homeowner, and that's how we got subprime loans. And we all know what happened with subprime loans. We don't need to artificially create homeowners, but we want to make sure that people are in an economic situation where they feel like they have good choices between whether they want to own a home or whether they want to rent, and they have the information that they need about those two choices, and they can make something that makes economic sense for them. I don't think we necessarily need to design our economy around homeownership. Some people want to rent, and renting is beneficial if you're the kind of person that bounces around from place to place. Owning doesn't really make sense, but we should at least have an economy where if you earn a decent salary, you should feel like homeownership is attainable to you. I guess what Riley Seaberg 92 is pointing out is that we do have a lot of supply right now, or maybe you could call an excess of supply of condos and apartments, but they're not in the places that people most want to live necessarily. So a lot of condos and apartments were built during the pandemic. It still wasn't enough to really make up for the lack of housing that was built pre-pandemic. But right now we do have a lot of condos for sale in places like Austin, Florida, Arizona, and parts of like their little pockets too. There was some condo development in Oakland and California. I don't think of California as being a place that built a lot of dense housing, but they did build there. So during the pandemic, because mortgage rates were so cheap and there was this demand for housing, builders did build a lot of dense housing in the places that were zoned for it. The issue, though, is that they really went all in on 1-bedroom and 0-bedroom units, because from the perspective of a builder, it is on paper more profitable for them to just jam as many units as they can into a building. And it's really expensive for them to add extra bedrooms because you need windows for those bedrooms. It's really expensive to add extra bathrooms because you need plumbing to those bathrooms. So all these builders, they were doing the math, and they decided to go and focus on 0 and 1 bedrooms. Because everybody did this, we have an excess supply of 0 and 1 bedroom condos and apartments in some parts of the country. And that's why some parts of the country, the housing market is so sluggish, because it's really hard to offload these condos when rents have been stable. The difference between owning a condo and renting an apartment, those are pretty apples to apples things. You can rent from a condo owner, for example. It's easy to do that. So when people go and do the math and they look at how much does it cost to rent an apartment versus how much does it cost to own that condo, it's very easy to see that the monthly rent is going to be less than the monthly mortgage payment because of how high mortgage rates are. Mortgage rates, as I said before, 6.8% for a 30-year fixed rate, when during the pandemic it was only 3%. And you have this market where people who owned condos or any kind of home during or before the pandemic were able to refinance into these record low mortgage rates at 3%. So their monthly mortgage payment, let's say for like $300,000 condo, it might be $1,000. They might be able to find a tenant who's willing to pay $1,200 so that they can rent that out and get a profit. But they're trying to find a buyer. That buyer would not be buying at 3% mortgage rates. They would be buying at nearly 7% mortgage rates. And I could do the math, but I'm going to just say that you're buying at 7% mortgage rates, then maybe you're paying $2,000. I just don't want to create another tab and waste your time trying to do the math, but you get it. If you own a condo that you owned during the pandemic, you can rent it out for more than your monthly mortgage payment because your mortgage payment is at 3% rates. But you're not going to be able to find a buyer to buy it because they're up against these 7% rates. So you're going to have to lower your price and take a loss on it, but you can just hold on to it and rent it out. So this is the distortions that we're seeing in a condo and apartment market right now, which make it seem like, oh, we have all of this housing for sale. The housing shortage is over. Not really. Just because it's very easy right now to find 0 and 1 bedroom apartments or condos for sale doesn't mean that they're appropriately priced, because these owners don't want to drop their prices because they can still rent them out at a profit and hold on to their 3% rates. And then there's the other issue that if you are a family, let's say you have like 4 people in your family, a 0 and 1 bedroom apartment or condo doesn't do you any good. Are you going to cram everybody into that? It still feels like there is a shortage of housing, because there is a shortage of housing that is appropriate in that for those families. So there's some chatter online about how there's no housing shortage. Look at all the homes that are for sale. I tell you about how there's 47% more homes for sale than there are buyers willing to buy them. But the reason for that is not because the housing shortage has gone away. It's because there were all these distortions that happened during the pandemic with mortgage rates that are still unraveling and causing a lot of homes to sit on the market because the owners aren't willing to sell them for anything less than what they bought them for. Because why would they when they have super cheap mortgages?